All right, everybody, welcome to Youth Ministry Minute. This is our ministry podcast where we talk about everything next gen, youth, young adults, general church randomness. My name is Elijah Garcia. This is my co-host Ryan Hurtado, and we're going to be talking about a little bit of leadership, a little bit of culture, and a lot of bit of Ryan's story about why he didn't quit volunteering at youth ministry.
A nightmare.
A nightmare? Why are you saying this? A nightmare?
Youth is one of the craziest things I've ever done. Besides working in the children's ministry, it's wild. I'm not gonna lie to you, man.
Okay, so how would you describe the difference between children's ministry and youth ministry then?
Youth ministry, I feel like it's more controlled chaos.
Controlled chaos,
Yeah.
whereas what? The kids ministry is just straight chaos.
It's just straight chaos,
just anarchy.
It was just legit anarchy, and I tried my hardest.
Dude, our church doesn't even have a kids pastor, so it is truly anarchy.
They entrusted me once a month to teach the kids, Jesus stuff, and it's I think I'm a decent person and such, but I think the fact that I was why are you trusting me with 30 kids each service?
The truth is, they just needed warm bodies. They needed
legit, yeah. And there was and the funny part was I had older adults helping me. They were the ones that were looking up to me and all right, what are we doing, Ryan? I'm what do you mean? Why are you asking me?
I don't know what we're doing. I just got the curriculum 15 minutes
legit,
ago.
I was just born yesterday. You guys have been on this earth longer than me. I feel like you learned something.
Kids are look at me. I am captain now.
I've had some kids that were trying to be like that, but you gotta be
With little kids, I found, and anytime I've jumped in for a kids pastor, is I bribe them with candy. And that might not be the most ethical thing, but it gets them to be quiet. It's good. Still works with some middle school kids.
Even that or games. I tell them all right, guys, we gotta get through this lesson and we'll play a game, and they'll be okay.
Brain spaz. They said a game.
I know the 4-letter word game.
All right, so a little bit of background. Ryan, you've been at our church for how many years now? You grew up in our church.
So yeah, I think at the rightful age of 8.
The rightful age?
I don't know.
The ripe old age? The ripe young age.
Ripe young age of 8 years old was when my mother heard our pastor on the radio talking about the church. And funny enough, we actually live close by it. So we were at that point, let's try it out. Legit, I live 5 minutes from the church. Oh, let's try it, And ever since then, it's kind of been wraps. It's the only church we'll ever go to. It's that,
and it seems like if somebody's Colombian, they all end up finding our church.
It is.
Our pastor's wife is Colombian, and so she pulls in all the Spanish speakers.
Legit.
And there's a subculture of Colombians.
It's a whole thing. Even I remember the first time when we went, my mom was oh my gosh, there's Colombian people here. I'm what? And I'm starstruck. There's other Colombians in the state of Connecticut. We exist
I don't
here.
know, man. I'm the minority here in Connecticut. There's lots of Puerto Ricans, there's lots of Colombians, and I'm the random Mexican from Denver, just hello. It's so my wife and I, we moved here a year ago this month, and you were helping at youth group before Mikhail and I took over as the youth pastors.
Yes.
So describe to me what was it like before, and don't necessarily expose people with their names, but just kind of explain what was going on. We had a little bit different youth team. We had a different kind of culture, and you were kind of, I don't know, were you roped into youth group like you were roped into kids church?
So I gotta be honest and say, since I was 18, basically when I graduated from high school, I've been a part of the youth group. I'd say at least there was 1 year or so where I was just I just didn't do anything, but then I went back after. But going back to what you're saying, how was it like? It was definitely not what I was expecting, nor what I saw would happen when I was an actual youth myself. I felt at times very I don't know how to put it, but just useless in a sense, and no one ever made me feel like that. Nothing nothing, like no one, like I said, no one said it to my face or anything like that. But it's like I felt like I was there as just a warm body,
Mhm.
like it's just there. And yeah, obviously, like I talked to the kids, I talked to them and played with them, hung out with them, but I never really, in a sense, got closer to them. It was only surface level, like, oh, dude, I did a layup on you. You think you're better than me? Blah blah blah. Like that kind of stuff, but never like asked them anything after, like, hey,
Yeah.
how's
So
school
you kind
going?
of play the games, but kind of stay surface level with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because we've talked about this not on the podcast a couple times about like, you know, your experience difference. And I think the number one thing you've brought up is like feeling like there's purpose. So like, could you like unpack that a little bit for me? Because we're trying to like kind of explain this maybe to maybe a new youth pastor or somebody who's looking to like build a team with youth volunteers. Maybe they are a volunteer youth pastor, and so kind of look at like what things were you looking for to stay with youth group once the leadership change happened.
Gotcha. So the biggest thing I've learned, and honestly, the one thing that sticks in my head is either to keep a leader or keep a student there, is just to give them responsibility.
Give them responsibility.
Well, I'll start off first with a youth. You let a kid, I don't know, just to say, for example, do attendance. Can you mark off, like, I'll give you a clipboard, mark off everyone who's here. I need you to like do this, like give it like a certainty, like I need to trust you with this, a certain trust, like, hey, please do this for me. It'd be a great help to us. And then next week, they might even say, am I doing attendance this week, or what am I doing? Mm-hmm. So that's one way, like, you'll keep a student there for sure, like
give them a sense of purpose.
Exactly. Now it goes to the same sense as a leader, like like obviously we're a volunteer, like that's what I am. I'm just a volunteer. I take my time out to do what I can. I'm not going to take the time out of my day just to show up and not feel like I have a purpose.
Yeah. And
there was two sides to that. I'll explain. So the one side, the reason why I kept staying a lot was, like I said, like I like to hang out with the youth. I'm a kid myself. I'm only 23, but I still love to act like I'm 14. I love to just joke, laugh. Like
you always want to cook them at basketball.
Like, see, it's just those little things. But I always had a part of me that was like, I never got close. I never talked with them. I never felt like I could break any ground with them. And I just never knew what it was, because I was like, what do? I really don't know. Like, because I said, it's my only time like volunteering to like help and teach these kids any way I can about growing closer to God. That's like the main purpose for me, like, to grow closer to God. Mm-hmm. So then once they leave, either they stay with us or they go their own way, but still keep what we taught them in their heart.
Yeah.
And one thing I noticed a lot is, for me, and actually a couple other youth leaders that when we talked, but they're not with the youth group anymore, it was just that sense of purpose. Like, I'm just there for a warm body. Yeah. So, and I'll be honest, we went through a few like youth leaders like that were in charge, and it obviously like ended how we can tell, because obviously you're a new youth pastor, but like it gave it like a year or two, and then of course like circumstances happen, and of course we had to find a new one.
Lots of change, lots of just like feeling like you're in limbo.
And so there were like, essentially we had to go through so many hurdles of like, what's the schedule, like what are we gonna do, how is this gonna run, and kids not knowing it's gonna happen. Next week could be some random person we've never seen in our entire life.
Yeah. I mean, that literally happened when I got hired. It was like, hey, we got a guest speaker coming in. Like, what are they doing? Oh, no. I was like, what?
So, and that's what it was. It was a controlled chaos. Okay, cool. We'll set like a time just to be here at the church, and all right, we'll play from this time. We'll speak from this time, and then hang out for the rest of the time.
Yeah. Well, I think you brought up a big part is like, any volunteer wants to feel like they're not wasting their time. And there's a couple ways we do that, right? Like, I think the easy part as a youth pastor, as a young adult pastor, is creating like the quote unquote like church, itinerary, or like what the services is supposed to look like. And something that, I was just taught at school and in other youth ministries was like, what's important to you is what you put time into. And so how we do things at CSM is I actually have more small group time, which is the time you get with the kids, than I have preaching time. Because like at the end of the day, like I can't be the only voice in these kids' lives. And the other side of it is like I need to be pastoring you guys to make sure you're healthy, make sure you're like as a team able to help in a lot of ways pastor these students. I mean, you've helped me with a lot. I mean, you've done middle school boys for most of the last year, and now we just moved you to junior high, like to juniors in high school. And a lot of it has been like, hey, like let's have some meaningful conversations with kids. Like when we come in, we do hangouts. We have, with our setup, we have like basketball, we have coloring books, we have video games, and like from the time kids come in, from the time to the time they leave, there's purpose in what our adults are doing. Like even in hangout time, we'll have it. We're like, hey, yo, you're in charge of the Smash Brothers over here. You're gonna come like go destroy them at Smash Brothers, but also talk to all the kids during this time. Like go play basketball, and we're working on this. So like, don't be a like bystander. Don't just be like what's the word?
Someone on
like
the sideline. Like
yeah, don't be on the side. Don't be a bench warmer. Like get in the game with the kids, no matter what that game is. Yeah. Because if you're standing there being the old person just watching them, they're gonna be like, "Oh, this is weird. This is creepy." Like, but if you're doing whatever activity with them, like kids are a lot more open to the conversations you're gonna have with them. And then like we're in New England, so like kids don't want to talk in groups generally.
100%.
Like they don't, but they will talk to you if you get them on just like a random one-on-one activity.
That works.
And like we have a lot of stoics. we have a lot of stoics, and like that's sometimes the hardest thing to gauge is, am I having an impact? So purpose. So let's talk a little bit more about what kept you around. Like what was that specific thing that kept you around when, oh man, there's another leadership change a year ago? Because I mean, we had a couple youth leaders jump ship when leadership change happened, and that's normal, honestly. Like every time there's a new youth pastor or a new youth leader, there's going to be some people who were helping that jump off. That's a natural thing. But what kept you around, and you, from your perspective, though, to be a part of the youth ministry?
Honestly, it was just to hang out with the teenagers. I think I just wanted to be around and be some sort of, I don't know, like I was saying earlier, like I didn't feel like I made much impact, like breaking like the surface, but like I wanted to be some sort of like role model or something with like, oh, Ryan's here, like let's go talk with him, or let's just hang out or whatever, and it happened at a time like where it's a group of boys, they're like, oh, what's up, like just hang out, just talk, whatever. And I think it was some of those relationships that I could appreciate and just be able to like say like, okay, like they want to come, hopefully, like I'm not the reason they come, but at least like it's like maybe they don't like it, but they're like, oh, Ryan's here, let's go, and we can like hang with him, and then maybe they'll keep coming, they'll staying. As leaders, I feel like we have to just be so like open. We can't be shut. Like we have to like try to attract as many of the kids, like just have as many conversations as we can. And ultimately, like that's in a way a big thing that youth group did for me is the fact that it helped me get out of my shell. It helped me grow confidence. It helped me in a way grow up. And helping in any way I could gave me that sense of like, okay, I'm a grown up now, like let's start acting like it. I'll have fun, I'll blah blah blah, but at the same time I want to like not assert age, maturity or anything like that, but like I want to be like what they'll notice me like, oh, like he is older, like he seems to have some sort of wisdom or some sort of like certain way to do things. Let's ask him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, my thing was, I felt like I knew at one point I would have a purpose or a reason to stay, and I would feel like my 100% complete self with the teenagers, and be able to be like, now it's the time for me to like shine, in the sense that like, all right, let's just like pour out the love of God that we possibly can on these kids, and be able to just keep them coming. Like right now, ever since like you stepped in, I think it's been that time for me. Ever since like last year, it's been such a big impact, not even on like kids alone, but like for me, the fact that now I'm in that spot where I'm officially growing, in the fact that, okay, I'm ready to dig deep with these kids. Let's talk. What's up? You okay?
Yeah.
Text them. Still have fun with them, but still keep them in mind, pray for them, and be able to help them grow in any sense, any way possible that I possibly can. And that goes into the fact that like obviously being a youth pastor, like, you know, I don't know what it is. I don't know what made me like change or something, but I feel like if there's a sense in the leader, like, okay, this is what I want to do. I like what I do. I'm not here just to put on faces.
You're talking about like the leader, right? Like
the actual, like the head honcho. Let's go with that. Like
the head honcho. Okay. Is it giving vision? Is he telling you guys, like, giving a good direction on how to do it? And you kind of bring up, like, you know, you were talking about, you know, being able to talk to the kids, being able to feel like you have purpose. But a lot of that, like, people don't realize, especially when you're new, like, there's a lot of youth pastors out there trying to be, quote unquote, the all-star youth pastor. And that, what I mean by that is, like, they're trying to be everything that your youth ministry needs. Like, they're trying to be the most charismatic. They're trying to be a great preacher. They're trying to do the music. They're trying to do everything cool by the kids. And that's not my approach. Like, personally, that's just not my approach. I view it as, the better I pastor my youth leaders, so that's like you and the other people on our team, because we have 11 people on our team. Like, the better I pastor the youth leaders, the better the kids will be pastored overall. Because at a church, our youth group, you know, we're on a weekly basis about 40 kids, and then, like, if we get them all somehow, if we were to miraculously get them all there, it'd be like 95 kids. And, like, straight up, I can't pastor all of them. Like, I can't know them all. And a lot of times the pressure is there to try to, like, I gotta know every single kid. I gotta do like every single thing for every single kid. But the thing is, like, even Jesus, like, had his disciples, and the disciples had people under them. Like, that's how we should be building all of our ministries. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to connect with every single kid.
100%.
But you can connect with kids that I don't even think about sometimes. Like that, like, you've talked a couple times about certain kids, and I'm like, bro, I didn't even notice that. I'm like listening to you. I'm like, dang, you're teaching me some stuff. And it really comes down to, like, my advice to new youth pastors would be, focus on team building before you're focused on getting kids to come to youth group.
100%. Because without a team, what are you gonna bring?
Yeah, like I heard this was a brilliant thing. Like, if there's a stressor, it needs structure. And so if your, like, youth program has a stressor, right, and that stressor is, you know, whatever it could be, right? If it's creating stress, you need structure in your ministry to be able to handle what God's giving you. And if you don't create the structure, then eventually it'll be taken away from you. And that's how I kind of view things. Like, I've had young adult ministries in the past that we got to like 40 people, and we didn't have the structure. And so the very next week we were back to like 20 people, because we didn't have the structures in place to properly take care of what God had given us for a couple of weeks, right? And so that all comes down to, like, we have to plan, we have to think, but ultimately build your team before you focus on getting a lot of people somewhere. Because if you get a lot of people somewhere and you don't have the team, it doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
And then, so I was kind of thinking about, culture building with all this. And, culture building comes down to, like, do people even like to be a part of your team? Like, that's honestly just part of it. Like, if your team is boring, if you are not connecting with people, people won't want to be a part of your team.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, a lot of our teamwork has grown out of our friendship, right? A lot of, like, even this podcast has grown out of friendships. It was like, it didn't start out with, hey, let's start a podcast. It was like, hey, let's make friends, and then, let's see what God does through that friendship. Shout out to Joe behind the camera.
Joe.
One of the friend that's behind the camera helping us with all this. But like, culture really just comes down to, like, are we creating a community that people want to serve in? That's really what it is. I mean, what do you think about that? Like, just creating a culture of where people want to serve. Like, that's it. That's the simplest way of putting it, right?
You have a great team, you'll have a great, like, youth group. Like, it's all ultimately, like, you can bring kids, but the kids are gonna stay. Who knows? Maybe one will stay because, we play games for 30 minutes. But then I see it like, the more leaders we have, the stronger leaders we have, and we're more connected, better chemistry. Like you telling me about before, like, I know kids that, maybe sometimes go under the radar or whatever. Then they'll know other kids do go under the radar. So then that's like another set of kids right there. It would fail so badly if you had, like, let's say like 11 leaders, but like none of them spoke ever, or just like you never connected. Like, it's just as simple as that. Like, if you can never connect with the people who you work with, it's just nothing's gonna grow from that. Because ultimately, why would a teenager stay if they notice they don't seem to be running things well? This looks really like even kids can tell when something's not, like,
dude.
They can tell when something's not right.
Sometimes I get too caught up in it, but like, I know when things don't run smooth, so I know the kids know when things don't run smooth, because like, we're in a pretty affluent area here in Connecticut, and like, that just means that kids have like an eye for detail, an eye for excellence, and that goes for everything. Like, there's excellence in all levels of ministry. There's excellence in the team, there's excellence in the program, and there's excellence in how well things transition from one place to another. And like, it takes a lot of prayer, it takes a lot of teamwork to make those things work well on a week-to-week basis. And I mean, we don't even have those things sometimes perfect. Like, there'll be days I come home and I'm like, some people will be like, that was a great sermon, and I'll be like, that was one of the worst services ever.
I could recall the time you said that. Actually, I was like, dude, pretty good. And you're like, nope.
I was like, what? Because I'm not thinking about, like, yes, I'm doing the sermon, but I'm thinking about, like, man, did the slides behind me even do the right Bible verse? You're like, wait a second, I'm preaching on a Mark. What is that? Malachi. What the heck?
It needs to be a well-oiled machine.
Well-oiled ministry machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing's ever perfect, but it's like, it needs to be as great as it possibly can be. That's why I like to.
Yeah.
That's why I like.
Well, and we talked about this too. It comes down to expectation of the team. Like, as the leader, I've got to put the expectation on the team and then hold you guys to the expectation, because there's been weeks where we do really well because the expectation was held, and then there's other weeks where, like, man, what is happening? Like, oh wait, I that was on me, like. And I think that's the other part of it, always recognizing that as the youth pastor, if you don't have the culture you like, that means you're not being the culture you want. Like, we can't want a culture we're unwilling to be. Like, if we want a team of servants, a team of, like, servant leaders is what I mean, then we got to be the number one servant leader. Like, if we want a team of worshipers, we got to be the worshiper. We want it to be the team of, like greeting and, like, happy and welcoming people. Like, it starts with us first, and then it comes down, and then we like, kind of in a lot of ways attract what we're already being, like people who want to be like that.
We need open-minded people. That's just kind of how it works.
Open-minded? Well, explain.
I like to pride myself in the fact that, like, all right, I like to see how things work out. My thing is like, I'm curious. All right, like I remember when you first got here, I was telling you, someone else. I'm gonna be honest. I don't like. Let's just see how it works. Like he could just be another kid who comes out of nowhere.
Who's this goober?
Yeah, legit, like comes out of nowhere, and it's just like, all right, whatever it is, what it is. And my thing is that when I say I'm open-minded, it means that I'm ready to serve. So I'm there. I'm not there to run the youth group. I'm not there to tell people what to do, and I'm certainly not there to tell like you, obviously, how things run, because ultimately the reason you're put in that position is because not only the fact that it's part of your journey, God wants you here, but the fact that as well you're qualified for this position. So see how you run it, and
in all fairness too, like with the track record, it would have been all like you would have been within your rights to go, like the SpongeBob like foghorn. You're like,
but
like you could have been like, oh man, not another guy, and it. I appreciated not only you but a lot of you guys being open-minded to a new leader coming in and having a super different culture to what our church has had in the past. And because that's not easy. Like we've talked about it. Like when I came in, it was a culture gut. It was like we were in like full youth group rebuild mode. It was like,
he came into a very just in need of like TLC kind of like youth group.
But that's okay. Like we can't always, and like if for younger youth pastors or even just youth pastors in general in their first full-time position or new, like the grass is always greener where you water it. Like I think like when I came, I had like people saying, oh, there's gonna be like 40 kids at the youth group, and I was like, okay, this is like a pretty big youth group coming in. My first couple of weeks, there's like 14 kids, and you can have two responses to that. That's like, oh my gosh, I've been bamboozled, I just moved across the country. Or you can go, no, this just means it's time to like put my head down and work. Like start loving people, start like thinking about and praying about what does God want at this church, and like put your head down and work for it. Like you cannot come in and expect everyone to just be on board with the new vision. You have to kind of prove that like you're the real deal. You got to prove that you're a man after God's heart, woman after God's heart. Like you cannot expect people to follow you if you're not first following Jesus.
No, amen, yeah.
And I think like that, especially here in New England, people look for that. People are looking for like, hey, are you like not a hypocrite?
Yeah.
So, because church culture is not in the culture here. It's just, it's not.
It's a very, very interesting region to work in.
It's interesting in general,
Everything. Yeah,
lots of Stoics, lots of New York Giant fans.
I think a lot of it goes to it's like hard to trust. I don't even know if it's even like
hard
the region,
to trust,
like the region we're in, but just the fact that like it's hard to trust. Like the fact that like I've seen so many people come and go. It's like I don't like how am I supposed to trust this guy? And like you said earlier, you have to show it. You have to obviously show like, all right, ready to work. Like we're not here to just twiddle our thumbs. We're here to actually work.
And it's a little bit of a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. It's like people don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. And it's like that was the goal last year for me, was like I gotta show especially these youth team members that I care about them. I'm not just trying to get them to do a bunch of monkey work. And
that's what got me to stay. A big reason why that got me to stay is the fact that I was in a point where I was like, all right, I think I welled out my welcome here. I'm gonna be honest, I really don't want to do it anymore. I don't feel like there's any love, okay, that's like harsh to say, but it just didn't feel like anything was connecting. It just felt like very like all over the place. But that's a big thing. If you show your passion for it, your love, your absolute like, this is my life, this is like what I'm gonna do 110%. Oh, you'll have people backing you up. Like if you show it and it like plays out, definitely. That's another like I said, I was in a place where I was like, I just don't feel like doing this anymore. But after you showed up and like you asked me like, do you want to still continue doing it? I was like, you know what? Like I prayed about it even, and I was like, you know, give him a shot. Like, you know, I want to see what he has to offer. And ever since then, it showed. It really
Yeah,
showed.
and I appreciate it because I was like, man, I hang out with this Ryan guy too much now. He's, ooh, I don't know what's going on with him. Sometimes he's a little zesty. But
Yeah, I told him that we're like you said, it's been a year right now, and the fact that I told him, if you go anywhere else, I'm following you. I'm going with you.
No.
I'm going with you, man.
Don't stalk me. Don't.
I'm going with you,
No,
man.
I'm not planning on going anywhere. So, kind of changing gears a little bit. So we've talked about like, you know, caring about it, what kept you around, just the practicality, man. Like, in the first year, we went from no worship team to worship team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think were they doing sermons before I got here.
Yeah,
they were. Okay, I had no idea. So they
small groups. That was.
So small groups is new.
That's new. Yeah.
So small groups was new. We went to a longer hangout time and got rid of games.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the leaders, I mean, the biggest changes are like, hey, leaders get to youth group an hour before. We got leader meeting 30 minutes before, and then once a month we have that youth next gen ministry meeting to get us all on the same page.
Yep.
And like that's a lot of change and a lot of culture shock. A lot of like, man, I'm surprised none of you guys like quit with how much was changing. I was like, man, I don't know how this is gonna go over. Like they went from, you know, not having to do a whole lot to like doing a lot, and I was like, oh, let's see what happens.
I think that's where it comes into play. Like some people feel like they have a responsibility. That was going to show up. They'll feel bad if they don't. Then something happens like, oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't make it tonight. You know.
Yeah, and the goal is not to make people feel.
No.
bad,
I'm
though.
saying,
So,
but it's like that sense, like you have a purpose when you go. So even let's say you're not able to go, you still like, oh no, like, you know, like I want to make it, like not in a sense make it up, but like, you know, still show like, hey, you know, I'm able to still do this. It was just
And I think the biggest thing that was a little bit shocking, and this is actually what got some people to not help anymore that were around, is I had the conversation about, you know, these kids really need your presence. And so what I'm asking you to do for the next 12 months is to like basically not miss a youth group. And that was like, some people were like, I don't know if I can really do that. And some people were like, okay, let's do it. And that started changing how the kids perceive all you guys. Like
consistency.
Yeah, consistency is number one. Like you can have some like interesting social skills, but because you're consistent and you care, kids will start telling you things that you're like, what?
Yeah.
Like, huh?
That happened to actually me the other day. Like the fact that like this particular student, like, you know, really we've talked, but I'm not saying like, you know, anything crazy, but I don't know what it was, but that past youth group just kind of like talked a little bit more, and I like got to see a different side of him I've never saw, and I was like, wow. Like you have to be consistent. You have to show that you want to be in their lives, and ultimately they'll in turn kind of pay it back and like let you in. I think that's the biggest gift I can ever receive if I'm doing youth group, is to be let in their lives, and I'll show them that I'll be there to care, not to break them or hurt them. I want to be there to build them up, you know.
Yeah. And like a big part of it is how we talk to kids, how we like, one of the things we talk about is like, we're about teaching kids, not disciplining kids. Because like the legalistic perception of church is everywhere. And so like, we're trying to like, when we're teaching them, we're teaching and we're having conversations with them. We're trying to get them to think with their own logic, not like just tell them what we want them to do, you know? And that's something like I noticed you're really good at, is like, you know, we're going to be gentle with these kids, but we're going to have expectation of these kids. And that's an important piece to the youth team, is like the fact that adults can talk in their life and have meaningful conversations and not just like plow into them.
Yeah.
And empowering you guys to do that. Man, I'm trying to think of like what else jumps out to you. I think we're gonna kind of wrap up here, but what else jumps up to you? How about this? If you were a brand new youth helper,
Mm-hmm.
what are you looking for before you say, yeah, I want to help?
Humility. I think that's one thing that gets me a lot. If I feel like you're a genuine person, I like to say I have a pretty good radar and like sensing that, because why would I want to go if it's just all about you?
Mm.
I don't want to go if it's just about you, how you look, and what you say, and how
Yeah.
holy you think you
Got the $400 church kicks, preachers with sneakers.
are.
got the fade,
Yeah,
the
that
fanny pack. Yes.
I think that's one thing. If you're able to connect, obviously, especially with your leaders, like you're able to be there for them, show that you care. That's
Yeah.
one thing. Like, don't just, all right, we need another body there. Be dope if you came. Here's the times. Cool.
Yeah.
See ya.
That's one of the worst things you can do is you're trying to find volunteers and you just find warm bodies, because then you end up with zombies.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need youth ministry zombies. You need people who want to be part of the team, want to be a part of the culture you're building, and are in it for the long haul. Like, it's better to be undermanned than to have too many people and half the team is just there for whatever reason.
Just to stand there.
It's like, And so, all right, Ryan. Well, thanks for sharing, and we're gonna do this again in a couple weeks.
Sounds
and
good.
we'll come up with some fun things. But thank you all for watching the podcast. This has been Youth Ministry Minute. I'm Eli.
And I'm Ryan.
And we'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Please make sure follow us on Instagram. Follow us on our own website, youthministryminute.com. And we also have Facebook for them old heads up there. The 40-year-old
boomers.
Whoa, the boomer pastors. I'm just kidding. I am just kidding. Please.
I'm not.
Remember humility. Gosh. And we'll see you next time.
Peace.